Prior to its surprise early release on July 10th, 2012, Frank Ocean's Channel Orange was set to be one of the most hyped releases in recent years. The singer-songwriter of New Orleans origin had emerged as a rising star of R&B from a theoretically unlikely place in the Los Angeles collective Odd Future. In the years prior, Ocean had moved to LA and began a sparkling songwriting career from nothing after the wreckage of Hurricane Katrina. With Odd Future, he began establishing himself as a mysterious figure in the group. His debut mixtape Nostalgia Ultra, self-released in February 2011, set his now legendary career in motion. The record featured eclectic instrumentals from original tracks by artists like Coldplay and MGMT. It also contained original records like Novocaine and Swim Good, both of which became singles and gained acclaim and popularity. In the year and a half following, Ocean's star rose. He went on a small tour in late 2011, gained a huge cult following, and entered the good graces of his label Def Jam, which after years of shelving him as a solo artist, finally saw the tremendous potential Frank Ocean had for mainstream and critical success. An album was agreed to be released for 2012. In the months prior, Odd Future released what would be its final record as a collective, the triumphant Odd Future Tape Volume 2, which Ocean featured on 3 times. Among these features is a well-known verse on the track Oldie, a posse cut strongly associated with its chaotic music video which broke out in rebellion during an awkward, somewhat glitzy photo shoot with known Predator Terry Richardson. Ocean's verse not only coins the title of the track, it also features numerous memorable lines, not the least of which being, "I'm high and I'm by, I'm straight." At the time it was released, the line came off as innocuous, especially considering the collective's flair for, shall we say, unusual lyrics. But a few months later, it would gain a whole new context, innocuous or otherwise. Channel Orange, Frank Ocean's debut album, was written in 2 weeks in February 2011, the same month Nostalgia Ultra was released, in between Ocean and producer Malay. After recording it that year amidst Ocean's increasing buzz, the album was announced on June 8, 2012 for a July 17 release date. That month, as press got their first listens of the album to come, questions were raised about the gendered pronouns used in some of the love songs on the album, which seemed to speak of male subjects of affection. In response, on July 4th, Frank Ocean posted a note to his Tumblr page. The note, titled "Thank Yous," was originally meant to feature in the liner notes of Channel Orange, but was posted early and publicly in response to the growing questions. It began as follows. "Whoever you are, wherever you are, I'm starting to think we're a lot alike. Human beings spinning on blackness, all wanting to be seen, touched, heard, paid attention to. My loved ones are everything to me here. In the last year or 3, I've screamed at my creator, screamed at clouds in the sky, for some explanation, mercy maybe, for peace of mind to reign like manna somehow. 4 summers ago, I met somebody. I was 19 years old. He was too. We spent that summer and the summer after together, every day almost. And on the days we were together, time would glide. Most of the day I'd see him and his smile. I'd hear his conversation and his silence until it was time to sleep. Sleep I would often share with him. By the time I realized I was in love, it was malignant. It was hopeless. There was no escaping, no negotiating with the feeling. No choice. It was my first love. It changed my life. Back then, my mind would wander to the women I had been with, the ones I had cared for and thought I was in love with. I reminisced about the sentimental songs I enjoyed when I was a teenager, the ones I played when I experienced a girlfriend for the first time. I realized they were written in a language I did not yet speak. I realized too much, too quickly. Imagine being thrown from a plane. I wasn't in a plane though. I was in a Nissan Maxima, the same car I picked up with bags and drove to Los Angeles in. I sat there and told my friend how I felt. I wept as the words left my mouth. I grieved for them, knowing I could never take them back for myself. He patted my back. He said kind things. He did his best, but he wouldn't admit the same. He had to go back inside soon. It was late and his girlfriend was waiting for him upstairs. He wouldn't tell me the truth about his feelings for me for another 3 years. I felt like I'd only imagined reciprocity for years. Now imagine being thrown from a cliff. No, I wasn't on a cliff. I was still in my car, telling myself it was going to be fine and to take deep breaths. I took the breaths and carried on. I kept up a peculiar friendship with him because I couldn't imagine keeping up my life without him. I struggled to master myself and my emotions. I wasn't always successful. Hey, I'm back. Hi. Today I want to talk about a very special song from a very special album, Channel Orange. I got the orange on. Bad Religion is the song we'll be talking about today, and I really just want to do my own kind of lyrical analysis of this song. It's a very open for interpretation thing, not me being like, this is what it means. It's Pride Month. This is probably coming out the last day of Pride Month. I wanted to get something out to talk about a LGBTQ plus artist that means a lot to me and means a lot to a lot of people, and to talk about some themes of LGBTQ plus representation and life experiences and oppression. And I think there's a lot of ways we can do that through the lens of this song. So without further ado, I, who am not LGBTQ plus, it must be noted, will do my best to talk about this and to use my platform as well as I can. I'm really excited though because this song is amazing. So yeah. Oh, by the way, that cover that you were hearing, it's by Soul Williams, a great artist. Check her out. So, Bad Religion is one of the records in which male pronouns are used for the love interest, but in this case it's kind of ambiguous as to whether those male pronouns are for a male human or perhaps to refer to God with a capital H, he. The very concept of pronouns and love interests are kind of thrown on their head as it sees Frank question institutionalized religion, or at least it seems to. It's actually a very complicated song lyrically, and that makes it great fun to analyze. Bad Religion comes in at track 14 on Channel Orange. It follows the song Monks, which is a song that speaks about forbidden affairs with women, while the speaker has some type of tour. I mean, it seems to be loosely based, at least, on Frank Ocean's experiences touring, and it also compares the touring and the crazed crowd of a performer to monks and their devotion towards the Dalai Lama. So this sets a tone of religious themes and romance and devotion that Bad Religion takes forward. Firstly, Bad Religion begins with an ominous, church-like organ progression, which is well broken down with Western music theory. When you listen to the Dissect podcast on this song, I recommend checking that out. It's pretty cool. The first two lines are, "Taxi driver, be my shrink for the hour." And these lines introduce the two characters of the song. There's the unnamed speaker, which you can conceptualize as a fictionalized Frank if you wish, but that's not specifically what it is. And a taxi driver who he approaches in his vehicle not for a particular ride somewhere, but to talk for like a pseudo therapy session. Be my shrink for the hour. He then tells the taxi driver to leave the meter running, meaning he'll be paid for the entirety of the trip, which is to go absolutely anywhere while Frank talks. So he's spending money for his time. Just leave the meter running. It doesn't matter where we go. The next lines are, "It's rush hour, so take the streets if you wanna." And that furthers this kind of irony because rather than trying to avoid this notoriously congested traffic during rush hour, you know, as you would want to in a taxi in a taxi cab ride, the speaker opts to go straight into the traffic, which is also a little bit ironic and also confusing because yes, the car is not going anywhere and it's just going to drive along slowly in the traffic, but I also can't imagine that the chaos and stress of rush hour and the noise would be something that's conducive to your, you know, most proficient therapy session. But maybe the franticness of that rush hour situation and that chaos and that noise outside is something that the speaker wants intentionally. Because a lot of people see stressful environments as the places to sort of escape the things in their head, escape their thoughts and emotions that are troubling them, to get engaged with the chaos or to have the chaos as this kind of background noise because the silence is more deafening, it's more difficult. He follows the line with, "Just outrun the demons, could you?" So more irony because this underlines this contrast between the slowness and stuckness of being seated in a car in literal rush hour with actually having to run away quickly from these demons, which of course we can see as metaphorical. He's asking the taxi driver to drive a certain way slowly into traffic, but also in a sense rush. which is clearly this play on running away from one's own demons. Clearly the speaker is very troubled, and demons is an interesting choice of word because it's a term that we often use to describe the mental and emotional struggles a person faces, their traumas, etc. But it's also a sort of religious idea, the idea of a demon, which is something that, you know, has many different definitions, but is essentially a bad creature. So here we have the first of many double entendres that talk about religion, but also other things. Talking about religion while not talking about religion. It's a big theme of the song. At the mention of this, with its ambiguous religious undertones, the taxi driver responds with takbir, which is Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar means Allah is the greatest. It's a very common expression from people of the Islamic faith, and it can be used in many different situations as a type of blessing and a type of reminder to another person. This, of course, indicates that the taxi driver is Muslim, which is not something that's uncommon throughout the world, throughout the West. In the United States, many taxi drivers are Muslim. In the United Kingdom, many taxi drivers are Muslim. And this has a correlation with the taxi driver profession being home to a lot of marginalized people because of how sort of accessible it is and how the hours can shift depending on a person's own input. They can kind of decide their hours, and all you really have to do is be able to communicate simple stuff and to be able to drive a lot. So a lot of people, working class, lower class people, become taxi drivers either full-time or part-time, and thus a lot of that will be marginalized people because a lot of marginalized people will be lower class and working class. Many Muslims belong to numerous intersections of marginalized identities in the West, including religion, but also including language, immigration status, culture, and of course race and ethnicity, depending on the person, and yeah, variety of cross sections here. The speaker's response, "I told him don't curse me," has a lot of different interpretations. For one, it can be just a reflection of why am I using these hand gesticulations? For one, it can be representative of the speaker's ignorance of the phrase, not knowing what takbir is, not knowing what it means, which is colored by this soon-to-be-revealed pessimism the speaker has towards religion and religious ideas. It can also be a reflection of the speaker's xenophobia and or Islamophobia, which is quite common in the United States and throughout the West. And it can be a reflection of the speaker's negative feelings towards Islam due to many practitioners' perceivably fundamentalist homophobia, which will become quite relevant. Of course, we just talked briefly about Frank Ocean's background and him coming out before the album. But we'll also see as the song progresses that many of the lyrics have these quite pointedly but also ambiguous LGBTQ plus themes, this male-loving male relationship themes. So with that, the speaker, if the speaker is gay, if the speaker is bisexual, as Frank Ocean is, I believe Frank Ocean identifies as bisexual publicly. Either way, he's an LGBTQ plus person. With that, it could be a potential sort of repudiation of that fundamentalist homophobia, which is quite present among a large amount of fundamentalist Muslims, and in a lot of Muslim countries homophobia is quite open and quite vigorous, and homosexuality or different forms of non-heterosexuality are banned. So then the taxi driver responds, "Bobo, you need prayer," which gives some indication of his background, given that in Sierra Leone and Creole, I'm getting a lot of this stuff from genius.com. In Sierra Leone and Creole, Bobo means boy. Most Sierra Leoneans are Muslim, if you take a look at the demographics of the country. And there are sub-communities of Sierra Leonean immigrants throughout the US, including one in Los Angeles, which is where Frank Ocean is based and perceivably then the speaker. But most notably, Channel Orange also features a track called Sierra Leone. So that might also have an indication of perhaps a callback to the country of Sierra Leone being in this song. And that's what would lead one to believe that the driver is from Sierra Leone. Of course, though, this is not clear, this is not clarified. And perhaps that's an important lack of clarification because it is from the perspective of the speaker who doesn't know where the driver is from and is really just having this pseudo-therapy session with a total stranger. And he's just recounting it. With the line, "Bobo, you need prayer," he's asserting that the takbir is well-intentioned and that the speaker is in need of prayer. He's trying to pray for him as something good to do for him, to help him. In response, the speaker then says, "I guess it couldn't hurt me." So he's showing a bit of retrospective, a bit of pullback, I guess. A bit of a pullback of his doubts, of his thoughts about religion. But then he brings forth a more defiant declaration on religion with the line, "If it brings me to my knees, it's a bad religion." This is the centerpiece line of the song, really. As it's said twice, it's a part of the chorus, and it's a huge upswell musically. So there's numerous bits of imagery that are relevant here. For one, being brought to one's knees evokes the idea of suffering, brokenheartedness, and devastation. Like, you know, I'm in love with this person, and I'm on my knees, I'm begging, As well as this idea of submissiveness, which is part and parcel of its connection to religion as a sign of respect, as a sign of worship towards something godly or towards God, such as how Catholics kneel in church on the pews. We refer to that as genuflection, specifically the act of getting down on one knee towards a reverence subject. So the imagery of both, again, we have another example of a line that is double entendre, a line that has multiple meanings, one of which being this sort of idea of religion within this kind of defiant context. And again, this is a defiant context that we understand with an outside context of Frank Ocean coming out of his sexuality, him being LGBTQ+, and the speaker potentially being LGBTQ+, as a reflection of Frank Ocean, as a fictionalized Frank Ocean. The next two lines blur the lines between describing what one would think is the speaker's view on bad religion and ideas of bad love in all forms, especially romantic. This unrequited love, to me, it's nothing but a one-man cult. Again, simultaneously pulling at two different types of imagery, one with religious imagery and another with a completely different, more literal meaning about relationships or about love. Now, the idea of devotion to a deity being unrequited love is one that relates deeply with the experience of being part of a religion which marginalizes you, which is the experience of many LGBTQ+ people who grow up in the Catholic Church or who grow up in Islam. So this experience allows a lot of LGBTQ+ people to understand the cult-like behavior that they see around them, this sort of devotion to a god or to a religion, and a preaching of a type of religion that does not allow for the understanding of and the confrontation of the flaws, the negative qualities, the marginalization that exists within the church. And it begets a feeling of being unloved by the God that you are meant to love with all your devotion, with all your might. This idea also makes especially profound the idea of falling in love with a person who doesn't love you back, legitimizing the world-changing agony of the experience by comparing it not only to bad religion, but to this experience of becoming jaded and ostracized by religion, this cult-like type of devotion. The next line, "and cyanide in my styrofoam cup," is a clear reference to Jim Jones, who led a massive cult into mass suicide. These ideas parallel one's obsession with a person to one's tunnel vision within a cult, which ultimately leads to their self-destruction. The chorus section ultimately ends with, "I can never make him love me, never make him love me," and then the speaker repeating "love me" over and over again, with Frank Ocean performing it with this dissonant melody that becomes almost faint and very haunting. This blurs the lines between a mere repetition of the last two words, "love me," and then this demand. It becomes this demand, "love me, love me, love me." So you see this extremely vulnerable moment from the speaker, which you wonder if is even perceived by the taxi driver or if we're slipping into the subconsciousness of the speaker. It's really heart-wrenching. And it's this showcase of Frank Ocean's songwriting ability to shift between different modes of storytelling, to really showcase this unreliable and this emotionally vulnerable narrator. We get the sense of how deep the agony and the suffering of the speaker is in this love situation, and that he almost seems completely dazed by it, and that he's slipping in and out of having a conversation and just getting into this state of just morose begging for love. The next verse begins with the line, "Taxi driver, I swear I've got 3 lives balanced on my head like steak knives," which is interestingly violent imagery. It shows that the speaker is hiding himself, parts of himself, from different people in his life. 3 lives. And that could be another signal of the speaker hiding his sexuality. I'm not sure if the idea of the steak knives balanced on the head is a reference to something specific, so if you have a sense of what that might be, if that exists, let me know. Then the speaker says, "I can't tell you the truth about my disguise. I can't trust no one." This continues to allude to the speaker hiding his sexuality, an idea which recontextualizes the earlier lines as being part of a conversation in which the speaker is able to use these male pronouns, "I can never make him love me," as a veiled reference to God, brought about by the taxi driver's takbir. He says, "I can never make him love me," and the context is perceivably still that of his views on religion, and in uppercase, he, but internally it seems to be his veiled expression of his struggles with loving another man and being heartbroken. The chorus repeats once more, then after a climactic falsetto scream, Frank sings the speaker's last few lines, the first being, "It's a bad religion to be in love with someone who could never love you." This stands out as this thesis statement, this culminating statement of the song, in which, again, these themes of cult worship and these themes of being deeply in love with somebody and these themes of religion are all tied together. And now we have this universal message about love, whether it be in religion, whether it be in a romantic situation, and about how loving a certain way, about how being in love with someone who could never love you, not just in love with someone who doesn't love you, but who could never love you, is bad religion. It is something that is self-destructive, it is cult-like, and it is something that can break a person. Similar to how Frank is feeling in this moment with reference to how he's feeling about this relationship. Finally, the song concludes with the lines, only bad religion could have me feeling the way I do." This reveals the speaker at his most vulnerable as all of the crescendoing music cuts out and leaves Ocean singing wistfully over echoing guitar chords. That was a pretty dramatic description of music. Finally, we have some insight into these demons that the speaker is running away from. Though we had a sense of it the whole time, that there was something that the speaker was going through and that the speaker was having love problems, having this extremely devastating situation in love, we're still left with numerous questions, but sadly, we've come to the end of our ride. So Frank Ocean received a good deal of love from the other artists around him after coming out as a bisexual man. This included a bit of a defiant statement from his friends and fellow Odd Future members, who essentially laughed off the perceived tension by pretending it was about Frank Ocean liking bagels instead.
Well, I actually don't give a f. Do you give a f?
That album was tight, whether or not he liked bagels.
In the years since, Tyler the Creator has released numerous songs and freestyles with lyrics describing romantic affairs with men, though he's never defined his own sexuality publicly. This for a period of time was seen as quite shocking, similar to how Frank Ocean's revelation was seen as quite shocking because of Odd Future's penchant for homophobic and other offensive lyrics. Though these read now more as defiant teenagers, some of whom were LGBTQ+ themselves, opting for shock factor within a vastly different political climate. Homophobia, however, has certainly not changed with time, though artists like Ocean and others after him like Lil Nas X have made music and engaged in public discourse about their status as LGBTQ+ men, and while perceivably woke culture is said to be normalizing LGBTQ+ representation, throughout the United States, public rhetoric dehumanizing and calling for violence versus trans people and other LGBTQ+ people seems to be escalating, and there are still prevalent sentiments within parts of hip-hop fans, R&B fans, pop music fans that are ragingly homophobic. There were these great arguments that centered on Lil Nas X's expression of his sexuality in music and this beef he had with Lil Boosie, who seemed to have such a big problem with it. During this Pride Month and beyond it, we owe it to ourselves and to each other to fight the oppression of LGBTQ+ people. And that includes elevating the voices of LGBTQ+ people, it includes understanding their stories, and it also includes speaking up about the violence and the oppressive laws that are constantly facing them. In 2016, 4 years after the release of Channel Orange, a mass shooting took place at a gay nightclub in Orlando, killing 43 people and wounding 53 others. The shooter considered himself a jihadist. Debate has occurred since on whether his motive to attack the nightclub was specifically based in a decision to commit an act of homophobic violence. In response, Frank Ocean posted this letter to his Tumblr. I read in the paper that my brothers are being thrown from rooftops blindfolded with their hands tied behind their backs for violating Sharia law. I heard the crowds stone these fallen men if they move after they hit the ground. I heard it's in the name of God. I heard my pastor speak for God too, quoting scripture from his book. Words like abomination popped off my skin like hot grease as he went on to describe a lake of fire that God wanted me in. I heard on the news that the aftermath of a hate crime left piles of bodies on a dance floor this month. I heard the gunman feigned dead among all the people he killed. I heard the news say he was one of us. I was 6 years old when I heard my dad call our transgender waitress a faggot as he dragged me out a neighborhood diner saying we wouldn't be served because she was dirty. That was the last afternoon I saw my father and the first time I heard that word, I think, although it wouldn't shock me if it wasn't. Many hate us and wish we didn't exist. Many are annoyed by our wanting to be married like everyone else or use the correct restroom like everyone else. Many don't see anything wrong with passing down the same old values that send thousands of kids into suicidal depression each year. So we say pride and we express love for who and what we are, because who else will in earnest? I daydream on the idea that maybe all this barbarism and all these transgressions against ourselves is an equal and opposite reaction to something better happening in this world, some great swelling wave of openness and wakefulness out here. Reality by comparison looks gray, as in neither black nor white, but also bleak. We are all God's children, I heard. I left my siblings out of it and spoke with my maker directly, and I think he sounds a lot like myself. If I being myself were more awesome at being detached from my own story in a way I being myself never could be. I want to know what others hear. I'm scared to know, but I want to know what everyone hears when they talk to God. Do the insane hear the voice distorted? Do the indoctrinated hear another voice entirely?
In love with someone who could never love you. Oh, only bad religion could have me feeling